Welcome back, Eliyora. Been quite a while since we had a chat here in the office.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Doc. There's something I need to talk to you about.
Alrighty, what's on your mind?
Well, this is going to sound like a strange question, but how do you deal with selfish people? With folks who don't really care about much but their own interests and their own egos, even if they really don't mean any harm?
Hmm. Well, I suppose that depends on the individual circumstances and whether you'd be interacting with such a person as a friend, a coworker, or just someone you interact with online. May I ask what brought this on, Ellie?
Well, I don't want to go into specifics for the sake of privacy, but a good friend of mine a while ago made a project that included a large number of other people. It turned out fantastic, but there was a massive negative response from others who weren't included in the project simply due to high numbers. And as a result, my friend was belittled and ragged upon. The only reason for it was simply because not every single person was in her project, which was simply an impossibility to begin with. Now she's afraid of responses when she does large projects because of the overwhelming selfishness and egotism of these people. Things like that, where even the purest of intentions and kindest of gestures can be smeared so badly because someone was, forgive me, butthurt about not being quote-unquote important enough to be in it. And this is far from the only time I've witnessed such instances of selfishness. I recently went through an entire ordeal with someone who was so angry about not being in someone's fan fiction. It's infuriating. It's like they never even stopped to think about the other side.
I see. Was this something you hadn't really seen before you began making videos on YouTube?
I want to say it wasn't, but I'm a terrible liar. My dad can be the same way, but at least in his case, I know he really doesn't mean to be. I don't understand how people can do that to someone else simply for the sake of boosting themselves up. I try very hard not to lose my cool when it comes to things like that, but I just don't understand. I know some selfishness is required in life for the sake of survival, but things like this? Hurting others without pause or thought just for the sake of your own ego? That's the sort of reasoning one pegs to a bully, and I don't like seeing that in people at all.
'Tis unfortunate we see this sort of behavior more widespread when it comes to the anonymity of the internet. And I suppose that really comes from the fact that one need not see a person face to face in order to express their disapproval, or even outright hate. It becomes so much easier to project one's negative feelings when it's only words on a computer screen and they needn't worry about any direct consequences. At the same time, I suppose anyone who creates something for fun and wants to share it with others online eventually have to run into those who will criticize their work for one reason or another. What about you, Eliyora? Have you ever created something you felt was one of the greatest works you ever accomplished and yet no one really felt quite as strongly about it as you did? Or perhaps you put only a little effort into something that didn't really feel all that worthwhile to you, but someone else felt genuinely inspired by it.
Well, to the second question, that tends to be how I feel about most of my videos since I never feel like I do well enough and always try to do better next time. As for creating something I felt strongly about, I used to be a writer, Doc. In fact, it was my dream to publish my own novels when I grew up. I would always pour my heart and soul into writing my stories, but it always seemed as though no one ever really cared. Only my mother would look over them, really, and even though some called me talented, it never felt like anyone ever really thought it was worth the time to read. And yes, I was young back then, of course, but over time it made me give it up entirely. Whether that was due to selfishness or my own lack of perseverance, I couldn't say. Maybe that was me being the selfish one, wanting more attention than I could have back then. I suppose, in that case, I can kind of understand why someone would be upset at being left out of something. Even so, I always feel like it's best to look at it from the other angle as well, to try to put yourself in their shoes. but it seems like I'm in a bit of a minority when it comes to that belief.
I won't deny that I can feel a little disappointed when I am left out of something I really felt I should have been a part of. I've sunk thousands of hours of work into my channel, alongside so many different creators. And even though I've come so much further than I've ever thought possible, I still can't help but look at those who have accomplished more and feel a little left out. That sort of emotion can really come over all of us, no matter our circumstances. While we may feel upset or even enraged whenever we or someone close to us is bombarded with hateful messages just for making something genuinely heartfelt, it's always going to affect us whenever we feel left behind ourselves. Whether it be in the small and subtle emotions or with envy being brought to the forefront. I'd love to see a more cordial response all around, of course. But then we really can't change how others think. We can really only change how we react to it. At the very least, Eliyora, I'm glad to see you standing up for those who have been hurt, bolstering their confidence to try again despite the inevitable cries of those who feel excluded. I'm sure your friends greatly appreciate your efforts in this regard.
I just don't like seeing anyone hurt or upset, I suppose. Guess we have that in common, huh? We both like to help. You do have a really good point, though, and I guess it's not really right to try to change how others think. I just wish more people online could be considerate and have basic decency towards others. But wishing doesn't cause change, does it? I guess the best thing we can do, as cliché as this sounds, is treat others the way we want to be treated and try to be an example.
It's a very lengthy process, I know. Seems that every time we help someone open up to a new perspective, another one comes along to take their place. Still, I find it to be far better than the alternative of answering hate with more hate and starting up another flame war in the comments. Then again, perhaps I may be in the minority here as well. But we can't just hang around on the sidelines talking about it and expect that change to happen on its own either. Shall we continue on this next week?
I wonder... Doc, there's a lot more we could talk about with this, don't you think? Do we need to stop here? I mean, there's lots of different ways selfishness affects people, both positive and negative. Would you mind if I stayed a little longer?
Of course, Ellie. What other topics did you want to discuss today?
May as well make yourself comfy, Doc. We're gonna be here for a while. There's also the reasons people act selfish, the extent people go to for the sake of their own egos, trying to tell others how to do their work because
It's good to be
they
helping.
know better, dragging others to only do what you want to do.